So, I mean,
The last time you interviewed me, I did not realize that we were on camera. How crazy was I? I thought it was literally just audio. So I remember I was in a bed with a bunch of books behind me. Afterwards, I was like, wow, that was not very, anyhow, it was fine. It was authentic. So, what are you going to do?
what am I going to do? I put it on
Yeah.
Westdoc. Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
Hi, I'm Chuck Braverman. This is another episode of Westdoc Online. We're going back to visit Lois Vossen, who is the executive producer of Independent Lens. We're going to talk about everything that's going on at Independent Lens because the last time we had this conversation was 6 years ago. It was episode number 40 or 42 in October of 2019. So has anything changed since then? Hi, Lois. How are you?
Hi, Chuck. Yeah, nothing's changed. It's all the same. No. Can you imagine a period of more change? I mean, it's been nothing but change.
Well, I'm a little nervous about this conversation because every time I pick up a paper, you remember those
Yeah.
newspapers, right?
Yeah, it's white with black on it. Yeah.
I think that was it. Every time I read or turn on the New York Times digital edition or my LA Times digital edition or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, the papers that I read, I see that cuts to Corporation for Public Broadcasting, PBS, my local PBS station and every other PBS station. And my first thought is, what is going to happen to all those documentaries? As you can attest to the fact that PBS is probably the number one supporter of, terrific documentaries made in America, certainly,
By far.
and by far, and PBS has had in the past and probably continues to this day at least an extremely large audience of people that watch documentaries. And so I guess the question and the reason, so let's cut right to the chase, besides saying, gee, it's great seeing you and you look fabulous and I hope you're well. Are you going to have a job next week or next month, or what's happening at Independent Lens?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chuck. It is great to see you again. I cannot believe that was 6 years ago. It does feel like it's gone by in the blink of an eye. And the other compliments as well. I am going to have a job, but it is a new landscape. It is a new world order. We lost 80% of our funding. So people may not remember when those incredible independents fought for the creation of ITVS in the 1980s, the idea was to create this government-assisted fund for independent filmmakers to bring independent voices, and a group of bipartisan Republicans and Democrats, many of whom had come to Congress because of Watergate, really agreed that we needed these citizen storytellers who were not beholden to any corporation or money source that would corrupt their storytelling. So we were, from the very beginning, a miracle of public policy. This idea that public funds, like the BBC, would be used to fund independent storytellers. Over the years, obviously, and from the very beginning, we expanded our fundraising to raise money to pay for salaries and to pay for our engagement and impact programs and the other things that we do. But the money that we give out to filmmakers is from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So it is a new day, but I also do want to make it clear that we are determined to stick around, and we are going to be here. We've been preparing for this for a long time. I sometimes joke for 34 years. It's not the first time that we have been, on the firing line, so to speak. And so we're out fundraising and we're finding new partnerships and new ways to continue to support independent filmmakers. And we're also really focused on how we can expand the kinds of programs and nonfiction that we fund, because you are right, PBS is still a great home for long-form documentary, but audiences, you and I included, have moved away from broadcast and we're getting things on streaming platforms. And so we want to make sure that we are continually to grow our streaming audience. And I'm very proud of the fact, and I have to give credit to my incredible team, we have tripled our streaming audience every year for the last 4 years. And I work with really smart people, and they keep coming up with great new ways for us to expand. So that's more of what we can talk about. But I do want to say it is a new world, but we are going to be here.
So just to back up a half a step, please correct me if I'm wrong, you're the executive producer of Independent Lens, right?
Yeah, I am.
And trying to figure, it's pretty complicated for somebody on the outside looking in, but you're basically...
Diagram.
Well, we might have to do that. But let me see if I can try and simplify it, and you correct me. So you are the executive producer of Independent Lens, which produces all these fabulous, wonderful, important, compelling, entertaining, educational, wonderful docs, which we love. But you have been in the past funded by ITVS, is that right?
Correct. We are. I am sitting right now at ITVS. We've always been an initiative, a program of ITVS. I began at ITVS, and then at ITVS, we created Independent Lens. So we are not the exact same thing, but we are... I describe it as ITVS is the mothership, and Independent Lens is one of the things that ITVS does. Historically, ITVS also funded docs for American Masters and POV and Frontline and other PBS series, American Experience. But the bulk of what ITVS funds, a lot of it ends up on Independent Lens.
So the big cuts that we read about that guy in Washington is doing, are they cutting funds to ITVS?
Yes. Well, they cut the funds to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and that's what's on top. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting gets all the money and then gives it out to PBS, television, PBS stations, NPR stations, and then at the end, there's this little thing called ITVS that they also give money to. So all of that money has been what's now stopped. So stations, PBS, NPR stations, ITVS, and what we call the National Minority Alliance, Black Public Media, Center for Asian American Media, we all now need to find new sources of funding because that pipeline of money has been cut off. Now, we've all also relied on other funding. So we've all had to, because it's not the true BBC model. We all always only got a percentage of our funding. So, but yeah, so that's, and CPB, is no longer going to receive that funding.
But so the 80%, that's what you're talking about. And so now, having gone back and looked at the episode we did, I asked you then what the budget was for typical documentaries that appear on Independent Lens, and I believe that you said that the range of documentaries at the time, this was 2019, October 2019, you said that the documentaries in general ranged from 700,000 to 2.2 million then. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, and I would say now, not just because of us and our situation, the contraction within our field in documentary in general, budgets are now coming down. You don't see 2.2 million budgets the way you did 2 years ago and 3 years ago and 5 years ago during that quote unquote golden era, during what I refer to as the bubble. That was a bubble. And it's important for me to also say we fund things at a much lower level. We do short form series like History of White People in America, which is something we are extremely proud of. It's a series looking at race in America. It's beautiful. It's animated. I kind of refer to it as our Hamilton. That was made for a fraction of the numbers you and I are talking about. But they're shorts. They're 4 minutes, a series of 4 to 8 minute shorts. So we fund at a wide range depending on format. But those feature docs, I would say, there aren't many filmmakers now trying to raise 2.2 million because it's just too hard. They've had to lower their budgets.
And independent,
not just because of our funding, but because of the world in general.
So Independent Lens docs are what length?
That's a great question. They vary. We've had 2-hour docs. We've had 74-minute docs, but most of them are feature length. They're somewhere between 80 to 84 minutes, or they're 1 hour, quote unquote, TV hour docs that are about 54 minutes.
You said earlier something, and you're bringing it up again about streaming, and I wonder if you could define what that means for independent lens.
Yeah. Well, it began for us actually as far back as 1997, if you can believe it. Back then, we were clawing to get broadcast time on PBS, and it was still the golden era of broadcast, so broadcast slots were really precious. And so it became really clear that if I wanted to grow independent lens, I needed to be not just reliant on those slots that PBS was going to give me. And there was this crazy new thing called the internet. So I remember going to CPB with a colleague and selling them on the idea that they should give us money to do things on the internet. And so we did this incredible game called World Without Oil. That was literally a game that looked at oil and the whole idea of sustainable energy. And so we've done games. We've done, as I said, short series. We've been doing that. We had a great thing called Indie Lens Storycast, where we were doing, short experimental and not experimental shorts. So we've been doing it for 20 years. And at the time, we would release that on websites, and then we began to release it on pbs.org. Then we began to release it on the PBS YouTube channel. And now we're also on the PBS app. But our focus, so that's been the evolution. It has been a steady evolution of finding other ways, other platforms to get more material out, more programming out, but also to reach audiences who don't go to PBS. And as much as I and you appreciate all the incredible work that PBS does, and I've obviously spent a great part of my career working there, they do not reach a lot of young people, and they don't necessarily reach a new audience that we needed to grow the series. So right now, when I say streaming, I am really talking about what we're doing on our YouTube exhibition. And we have had great success with films like We Want the Funk, where we have millions of people watching our feature docs on that streaming platform. And that's where we see our future growth, because we're still beholden to making this programming available to the American public for free. That is still our mandate, is to fund, support, help co-produce, and then present incredible programming so that every American has an opportunity to see it.
It feels, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you, but it feels a little bit to me, by going on YouTube, that they're kind of, I don't know how to put it. I was going to say the enemy.
You can say it bluntly. We've talked about that, Chuck. For filmmakers, some filmmakers struggle with it because they don't view YouTube as sort of an elevated platform. And, YouTube is a commercial platform. So what will happen in the future, we don't know. But it is where everybody is. And we have to go to an audience. I believe very strongly, and we all believe this at ITVS and Independent Lens, because we are a public entity, we have to serve the public. And the public is on YouTube. All of us go to YouTube. It is the most used, watched platform in the world. And so if we can find a new audience there and expose them to this incredible work, we're doing what our original founders wanted us to do, which is serve the public and get to a mass audience, not to dumb it down, but to get to a broad audience with programming that serves a democracy. And that's very heady stuff. When I say it sometimes and I hear the words, I'm like, I know that sounds very heady, but we just had a great board meeting. And one of the things we talked about was, if the people who started ITVS and fought for it and got that legislation in 1988 were doing the same thing now in 2025, they wouldn't be saying, hey, give us money just to be on PBS broadcast. They would be saying, what is the biggest platform where we can take this incredible work that is so essential to a democracy and reach the biggest audience. And so we have to be thinking, we at ITVS and at Independent Lens, how do we fulfill that mission in 2025 and 2026 and 2028 and beyond? And as you know, it's a fractured landscape. Viewers are so overwhelmed with opportunities of what to watch. But if we don't start with where we have viewers, then you're really in a difficult situation, because to bring viewers is the hardest work right now.
When your shorts or 60-minute or 90-minute films, Independent Lens, run on YouTube, are they interrupted by commercials?
No, they are not.
How do you do that?
You can do that. You don't have to. YouTube can turn on and off their advertising. All of
you
that.
Control. So by not so you are, I assume, not monetizing, not requesting to monetize, and by not requesting to monetize, there are no commercial breaks.
That is correct. That remains one of our, again, number one priorities, is to present work without commercial interruption, because we're not in the business of selling products. We're in the business of sharing stories and telling the stories of Americans' lives. So no, we do not monetize. Now, you bring up the important thing that we also talk a lot about. How are we going to keep this sustainable? And so what we're doing right now may not be what we do 6 months from now or a year from now. We're constantly looking at how we can evolve this model into anything that becomes sustainable for filmmakers. But also, you know, when I began in this field, when you began in this field, there was sort of an assumption that documentaries were not a place to make a bunch of money. And I think that is sort of where we've come back to after the bubble, is a realization that social issue documentaries are made in the public good, by and large. Some of them may break out and make money, but that is not really the best way to create the best work. It's literally how ITVS was created, by making the case that these stories were so essential. There needed to be support so that the filmmakers could go off and tell true stories and not be beholden to commercial interests. We are in a moment now that could change. That's the other thing that we have to remain aware of, is we are in a moment that is this moment, and ITVS will survive it. What will happen down the road, we will see what will happen down the road. But it is, there's a lot of money that went out to filmmakers. It's absolutely true. ITVS has been the steward of a lot of money that went to make a lot of incredible documentaries. 1,200 would be, or I don't have the exact number, so don't quote me on that, but I know at least more than 900 documentaries. You
mean in the history of what? Of ITVS or Independent Lens?
Yes, ITVS, since we opened our doors in 1991. And Independent Lens began in January of 2003. So before Independent Lens, we were making documentaries that went to PBS, that went to POV, that went to other series. And since Independent Lens, we've been making documentaries that go to Independent Lens and go to other series. So, yeah, well over 900 for sure.
I want to bring up another note, and I that is a, how do I put this? It seems like another weight on your shoulder going forward to try and get funding in today's climate, and that is your diversity and wokeness sort of adds insult to injury in an ironic way, right? So,
in terms of the question about our diversity mandate, it's written into congressional language. We didn't make that up. That was literally, that's what's written into law, is that our funding and our mandate is to support diversity. Now, diversity can be defined a lot of different ways, and we define it, broadly in some ways. It's, we have a lot of programs about disability. films made by filmmakers with disabilities, films about disabilities. We have a lot of films that look at elder care. Right now, we just had this great series about neurodegenerative diseases. That series, The Matter of Mind, was made for elderly people who are facing those issues and their caretakers. So for us, the idea of what our mandate is not something to run away from or to hide. It's actually baked into our DNA. And I think we all know that these partnerships that we're forming now with new funders and new supporters, there are people who want to continue that long tradition of expanding the scope of who gets to tell stories and what stories we tell. So I would just say that it's been true since 1991, and it remains true. That is our mandate.
Can you tell us who some of the new funders are or will be?
I'm not going to talk about that today. We'll probably, obviously, they'll show up in our credits. So when you watch the show, you'll see funders listed in our credits. So I'm going to just pause on that. But I think what has always been true for ITVS is we've looked for new funders, people who don't truly traditionally fund nonfiction or even media, and have brought new funders into the fold, because the work we do is both, it's obviously documentary and nonfiction, but you can look at it from a broader context of journalism and how do you have a healthy democracy. So there are funders who are interested in what we do beyond traditional doc funders.
I was reading this morning, I think, about Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, who got $47 billion or something like that. And what the essence of the story was, she has quietly, off the record, basically written checks to organizations, nonprofits, whatever, in the billions of dollars. She's given away 14. You should try and find her phone number if you don't already have it. She's a perfect person to become best buddies with.
Well, if you or anybody listening knows her, please introduce me and introduce Carrie and I, and we would be thrilled to meet Mackenzie. We would love that opportunity. I welcome the opportunity to meet her. She is doing incredible work.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up?
I would love to.
The new films that are going to be on, I assume, your local PBS station and PBS app and YouTube.
And YouTube, right? And yes, they are going to be on many platforms. So we're very excited. I think it's, again, I say this every year. I sound like a broken record, but it is truly one of our great seasons. We had 4 films premiere at Sundance. So those films are all coming. Films like Life After, an incredible film that looks at disability. The filmmaker Reed Davenport explores his own story, but the story of other people, and broader issues around disability rights and right to dying.
Requests for medical assistance in dying are increasing across the country.
Our biggest fear has always been that having a disability would become an acceptable reason for state-provided suicide.
I never thought that a doctor would ever question life.
Imagine you're waiting, getting sicker the whole time, but then someone offers you death within 90 days.
A trip to long-term care is basically a one-way trip. And in my mind, MAID is the lesser evil.
We have obviously the incredible film The Librarians by Kim Snyder, which is about censorship.
These are 2 books that I was asked to be removed, and I would not remove them.
Let's not misrepresent things. We're not taking Shakespeare or Hemingway off the shelves, and that's absurd.
When you start talking about removing African-American authors and African-American history, I got a problem with that. This book was banned.
We're not in it for the money. There's no glory. We love our children, and we're willing to do anything.
This is a spiritual war, not a political war.
I lost my job for asking questions.
If you would have asked me 10 years ago if I was going to have security concerns at a librarian conference, I'd have been like, you're nuts.
and what's happening in libraries, both public libraries and school libraries across the country. It's not just happening in red states, it's happening in all states, purple states, blue states.
Why?
Why? Because there are people who feel we should not have access to books because they're either immoral or they are not in the best interest. So there is a massive...
In blue states, too.
Yes, absolutely. It's happening here in California. It's happening in New Jersey. It's happening in New York. It's happening now. The movement is going across the waters. And it's happening in England and other parts of the world. I mean, if you look at World War II and that moment in history, censoring books and ideas is one of the first things you do if you want to stifle creativity, if you want to stifle free speech, if you want to stifle free thinking, you start.
But we're not in World War II now. I mean, I'm surprised to hear you say in blue states too.
Absolutely.
When is The Librarian? What is the title of that show, and when is it going to be on?
It's called The Librarians, and it opens theatrically in October.
Can you send me a link?
Of course.
Right away. I thought maybe we can talk about that as a separate thing, because I'm sort of shocked about that.
You have to have Kim and her team on, because it's an incredible... I was just with them. We did some screenings, and I was able to be with them for a couple of days. And the audience response to that film is so incredible. Always, there are librarians in the audience. But more importantly, as you said, people are not tracking this. They're not tracking. And it's actually beyond the banning of books, Chuck. It's also about taking over school boards and then taking over the entire curriculum. That's ultimately the goal, is to take over the entire curriculum. But anyhow, I would love to talk more about the librarians, but you should do a whole hour on that with Kim for sure. We have, what else from Sundance? Third Act by Tad Nakamura, which is a beautiful film about his father, Robert Nakamura, the godfather of Asian American cinema.
My dad is known as the godfather of Asian American media. He made one of the first films about the Japanese American concentration camps.
110,000 Japanese Americans were put behind barbed wire.
When my dad was my age, he made a film on his dad. I could see and hear what my Ji-chan was like as a younger man.
It's a beautiful, exquisite film. And because there are so many themes to it, it really touches a lot of different kinds of people, a lot of people interested in a lot of different themes. So that's coming later in the season. We have a beautiful film called Natchez, which premiered at Tribeca and won 3 awards for Best Documentary, for its cinematography, and for its editing.
Natchez is a place of healing of the ugly past.
I'm about to violate some Southern pride narratives with truths and facts. Throw your hat on. Jim Crow was constitutional law in the whole Deep South.
Natchez is a new Natchez. It is a Natchez that appreciates and loves our history, all of it, even the bad.
Oscilloscope is releasing that theatrically, I think in the next month.
So that's not a conflict for you? A film gets released commercially, theatrically?
I would say minimum 50% of our films have theatrical release. Everything from going back to, I Am Not Your Negro to, you name it. All of our, we've always had huge theatrical releases as a part of our exhibition distribution window. We want films to go out and have a theatrical experience. We've had, ITVS I think has had 25 Oscar nominations, Independent Lens has had 10, and we welcome that exhibition. We think it's really important as another part of our art form, and certainly a way for our filmmakers to grow their careers and to find different audiences. So yeah, we have many. Again, there was a period where over half of our films every season had a theatrical release, back when docs were really all getting, when there was so many more theatrical distributors out there doing documentaries pre-COVID. COVID's obviously put a hit on everything. But there are moments in history where obviously it becomes a bigger issue. And we are definitely in one of those moments. And there is a stifling of free speech. And there is a stifling of ideas and of going against the grain, not following the herd. And books and art in general is all about a counter to that. It's about, no, explore, learn the world. So it's not surprising that we would also be living in a time when people are trying to clamp down on that, because it's about reaching people in their homes. And every topic we've talked about, Chuck, change happens on a local level. Now more than ever, change happens on a local level. So if we can get these films in the hands of local organizations, local stakeholders, local, whether it's the Boys Club of America or the Boy Scouts or the PTA or a local religious organization or a veterans organization, then that's how change happens. So we've been doing that our entire existence, but we're even more focused on it right now because of that need to be in local communities where people have access to this content, these programs.
Lois, you are a inspiration, and I just wish you the best, and I hope you get more funding than you had before and are able to keep making high-quality, great films. Thank you for being on Westdoc.
Thank you, Chuck, for everything. And I want to say a shout out to my team, because without them, we wouldn't be doing all this great work. But thank you so much. And I hope you're right. I hope that we can get more funding than we had before, because we're more essential than ever. This work is needed.
Mackenzie, maybe we should just put her name all over this. Mackenzie, call us.
We're putting it out there, Chuck. Somebody who's listening knows her, and they're going to make an introduction. It's going to happen.